My company is Raging Sanity Consultants, and we're going to talk about how to do your CRM project right today. Vision for what we want to achieve today. I want to equip leaders like yourself with the ability to and strategies to have successful CRM implementations and to spot warning signs that might pop up along the way and understand some reasons why CRM often goes wrong, and then share some strategies for success. This is our team, myself and Hero, Wendy and Mike. Together we've got decades of experience in technology, project management, and training. And you can find us at ragingsanity.com. The platforms that we focus on right now, as John mentioned, Salesforce, RingCentral, which is an IP or VoIP solution, and Zendesk for customer support, and LionDesk. I won't say too much about these. You're all familiar with Salesforce, I'm sure. It's a really powerful platform of declarative automation tools. So when I use the term declarative, what that means is we can customize solutions for a business without having to program it, which means you get things built faster and for less money. So when they talk about declarative automation or declarative tools, that's what we're talking about. It still has the ability. If you need to drop down to the code level with Salesforce, you can in the Apex environment, but it's not necessary for most operations. And it's got a component for every aspect of a business. It's really a powerful ecosystem. I was quite surprised once I started digging into it and learning it myself. I have 3 certifications now with Salesforce and working on my 4th currently. RingCentral, I was thinking, hey, I need a 1-800 number for my business, right? And so I started looking around, and they came up on a web search, and then I started digging in and researching and found, wow, they do some amazing stuff. They're the industry leader in what's called unified communications as a service. And more I looked into them. Well, unified communications as a service, it means it's your voice, it's your text communications, whether it's at the office or on a handheld device. It's your interactive voice response, it's your auto attendant, file sharing, video conferencing, all on one platform. So you can be doing a video conference and switch over to do file sharing, and all that can be done on a tablet or a phone as well. Very, very powerful, and what's great about it, unlike the old POTS phone systems, all of it can be managed and administered through a web interface. So you don't have to bring out an expert to come in and rewire the cabinet like in the old days. Zendesk, it's a great customer service platform. It's easier to get into than Salesforce Support Cloud, simply because it has a lower price point, and it does one thing and it does it really well. They have their own call center VoIP solution as well, knowledge-based ticket management, all the stuff you'd expect from that sort of a customer support system. LionDesk is something I got into recently after hearing a lot of great things from realtors I was networking with. They're saying this is the exciting new thing out there. And they target the real estate market, but really other industries could use it as well. The amazing thing about this CRM platform is it's $25, if you get a code from me, $20 a month, depending on how you pay. And it's not very flexible. The automation that it does is not very flexible, but what it does it simply and it does it well. A couple of key features: you can do video to text and video to email, which a lot of realtors like, having that ability to put their face in front of people. Team sharing, deal management, and automated drip marketing campaigns within the system. And again, but the price point is simply amazing. Again, not the most flexible thing. There are things that it can't do that I was doing with Goldmine 15 years ago, such as if a status field changes, have a different campaign attached. LionDesk can't do that yet. I'm hoping someday. But the other thing that's great about this, really simple interface. And I don't know if you guys hang out with realtors much. They're not the most technically skilled people on the planet. They're great with people though, right? So we don't want them to become geeks. But that's one of the reasons why they really like this platform. Very simple interface. All right, getting into it. We want to avoid the mindset that technology or a particular package is going to be the silver bullet. People who are just trying to sell you software, they'll give you this impression. But if you guys have been around enough, you've seen it's not all about the package you get. There's a lot more that determines whether or not it's successful. So don't think if I just get this, that's going to be the ticket out of here. Process. I'm sure John can tell you, John probably preaches this in what he does. Process is more important than technology. Absolutely more important. Really technology, whether it's the software you're looking at or the hardware or other aspects of your infrastructure, it's really just speeding up your processes. That's how we should think about it. Okay, when it comes to business size and the use of technology, there's going to be a couple differences. I think most of us here are small businesses, right? So I'll focus on that. This is generally true for all aspects of small businesses. When you're smaller, some things just have to be ignored. I mean, we don't like to ignore some things. We don't like it when things fall through the cracks. We don't like it when we can't pursue all the initiatives that we want to pursue, but that's just the nature of smaller businesses. We're still trying to achieve consistent revenue, and we're still working out our processes. A lot of small businesses haven't even figured out their processes yet. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah.
So, and that's a good time though for them to.
Mentor a group of startups at 10B on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, so you see it.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, but that's normal. It's time to be working it out. Finding out what their products, what they need to do with their product, with their market space. Also, there may not be as much integration, and again, that's fine. That could be for budgetary reasons, and that's okay. You may have less ideal solutions for now, but just focus on what's going to be higher priority, meaning higher ROI for your business. Automate those things if you can, and what you do, try to do it well. No half measures, because you're not going to see the ROI when you do half measures, and it's just going to be a money drain for you. Now, it's still great to automate things in a small business where it makes sense, and there are definitely things that can be done there to improve things. Especially today's technology is just amazing. Considering where things were 15 years ago when I was doing this sort of stuff, I'm really impressed with the tools out there. I have a hard time actually keeping up with all the new tools that are coming out.
Yeah.
All right, so larger businesses, won't spend too much time on this, but you really can't ignore the small things in a larger business. Why? Well, small things going wrong could be an indication you've got a serious problem with the process, and you need to spot that. Also, those smaller things, they add up in a larger business. A lot of times they go unnoticed because you're in a large organization, but customers will start to pick up on those things. So larger businesses can't ignore the smaller things, and they have the resources to start addressing those. But again, especially they could be indicators that something's going wrong at the process level. That's medium-sized business. That's typically where we're seeing the growing pains, right? We're making that transition. So it's going to be a mix of both. So some pros and cons between the old way, which was out-of-the-box software, and the software as a service model, which is currently very, very popular. Cons with out-of-the-box. Well, the software companies that are selling the boxes, how are they going to get more revenue after they sold you? They need to sell you an upgrade. So you get on this constant upgrade chain. Maybe they accidentally break some things so that you have to do an upgrade. Not saying they do that on purpose, but they don't have a great vested interest in fixing some things if they instead can sell you, fix it in the upgrade. There's compatibility.
In the middle of the day and change the data.
Yeah. There's compatibility breakage with various software updates. That's more common with out-of-the-box software. If you upgrade one, you may have to upgrade other systems. For compatibility reasons. Larger upfront fees going out of the box. And software companies just may not have as much of an interest. I mean, they all want to see you be successful, but they don't have as much of a vested interest in seeing your future and continued success as those who have you subscribing to them and getting a monthly fee from you. Pros, you own and control your software and your data. That's a big pro in some situations. And no monthly fee. If you have a nice solution, you build a great solution, you might be able to run on that solution for 10 years. I've had clients run on a system for 10 years. Just being careful, over time, other things around it start breaking as the operating systems change, for example. But you can get a nice ROI potentially, but not guaranteed. Software as a service, the SaaS model. Cons, you got the monthly expense. We all don't like additional expenses. It's not hosted on your site. That actually could be a plus, it could be a minus, depends on the situation. And it is dependent upon the internet. So you're going to want to consider how robust your internet is and what kind of redundancy do you need in your organization. There might be some regulatory issues depending upon the business where data they have concerns over where your data is stored geographically. So that might be a limiting factor. Some changes might require a slower response if you're making a change in your system. Depends on the operation that you're trying to do. Sometimes it requires a special approach when coding. If you have software in the cloud, you can't have massive amounts of data being pumped back and forth all the time. Typical programmers don't have to worry about that when they're working on a single system, but it requires special programming techniques if you're trying to do some of these big data operations with a service that's in the cloud. And so if you are using cloud software and you're doing having someone come in to do some custom code, you want to make sure that they're experienced in that environment. Again, related to that, limits in operation sizes, and some changes in your system might require approval from the vendor. So instead of doing it instantly yourself, you might have to wait a day or a couple days waiting for vendor approval. And also, you have less control over the implications of updates. Sometimes what's nice about it, SaaS systems, they update themselves. You're always current. Still, there's the possibility of some breakage, and you may not have control over that update. You're going to get the update whether you want it or not. But generally speaking, especially if we're talking about declarative customizations rather than programmatic customizations, you're not going to have a problem because they don't want to break their own stuff. They don't want to lose you as a customer. So there's a lot less breakage, in my opinion, with the SaaS model than there was from the traditional model. Again, some pros: lower upfront costs, which means it's easier to budget a CRM project with a SaaS-based system. Easier setup. They scale very nicely. It's not hosted on your site. That could be a plus. You have a backup in the cloud now. SaaS providers have better security and backups than you will ever have in your business. In some cases, they're supporting government operations. I think Amazon signed a deal recently, didn't they, with was the Department of Defense? So they have to have excellent security. They also, because they're getting continuous revenue from you every month, they have a long-term interest in your success. And so that's built into this model is a win-win mentality. They also do more testing for compatibility. Again, they don't want to tick off a customer by breaking something, so they're going to do more testing on the front end. Doesn't mean it never happens, but they're just more careful about it than, say, somebody who already has your money and they're not worried so much about you shifting to another product. And also, the software as a service model helps with the longevity of the software vendor. And you might think, well, why do I care about that? That's their business. I don't care about that. Well, if you like their product and you like what they're doing and they're helping you to be successful, wouldn't you like them to be around 10 years from now? Benefits of CRM, why do we bother with it? There's lots of studies I could cite. This one's a bit older, but it's a good study. It's reported in Business Wire, a study by IDC. Found that businesses that have a successful implementation of CRM, and that's the key here, it's a successful implementation, not all of them are successful, saw an increase from 16% to 1,000%. I'm not sure if that 1,000 is a big outlier out there, but something even more to the point here, 52% in this report generated an ROI between 51 and 500%, and 30% reported returns of 501%. Average savings, this was very interesting from this report. Average savings, only 7% of the savings were due to technology. 42% of the savings came from process enhancement, and 51% came from increased productivity. So what that should tell us is part of what it takes to have a successful CRM implementation is not simply the technology, it's the processes we're emulating with the technology. If you have bad processes and you automate those things, chances are you do not have a successful CRM implementation. You don't show up in these metrics here. Benefits of marketing automation. You guys, I'm sure, are aware of a lot of these things, but things like campaign management, social media management, easier A/B testing on click rates and open rates, for example. Cleaner data. This is often overlooked, but this is critical, especially for your marketing department, having clean data. How do you get that? Well, on the design end, what your salespeople and other staff are doing in the system, are you controlling what data goes into the system through field validation and having required fields? The sooner a business, so small businesses often can be the worst culprits But the sooner you can get into good data habits, the better, because that's less to clean up in the long run. And I tell you, there are no magic bullets to data cleanup operations. Big corporations do not have some magic tool that will go and just clean up the data for them. It still is, I mean, there are some tools to speed some things up, but it's still dependent upon sales reps going through and manually cleaning up a lot of things in their database that are not the way they should be. Other benefits of marketing automation, things like web to lead. I had a client out in California, this is back in the gold mine days, Don Parsons, the fellow that I mentioned, and when he finally let me build the system that I envisioned for him, he had all of his campaigns connected. From the moment a prospect entered his pipeline, there was a campaign. All he did was change a status line, and the next appropriate campaign would be connected to that prospect, or if they became a customer. All the way down to the follow-on, 1 year anniversary after the closing, or other important dates within the system. Had things built into it, for example, let's say docs were ordered. As soon as docs were ordered, a fax got sent to a third-party company with the client's address, and a box of cookies was delivered to their door. Now, so he's able to have that level of service that he wants to have without having to remember, oh, I need to go place this order for these cookies. He just changes one line, one status field, and all of these other things happen. At the close of a deal, all of his data for the current loan got moved over to previous loan. So when he goes to look at that contact, let's say a couple years later when thinking about a refi, he's got all that data right there in front of him. So that's, again, the power of marketing automation. Sales automation. There's some crossover here between some of these. Things like click to dial is a very nice tool. It's something that, for example, RingCentral does when you integrate it with something like a Salesforce or a Zendesk. Calendaring, we all know these. We've been using these quite a bit for a while. So, but some things that can be really nice. Approval process automation. You can build these into systems like a Salesforce system to where instead of having to, manually or through the tennis shoe net, go get approval from somebody, it can be automated within the system. And I mentioned the automatic follow-ups I did on Don's system. Same idea here. Other benefits, support automation. I had a situation one time where I had a really expensive keyboard that I bought, and it served me well, but one key started breaking, and I wanted to contact this company and let them know, I just want to make a recommendation. A keyboard this price should be more resilient than this. I just wanted to make that suggestion. I was still happy with the value I got out of it. They had no mechanism in this organization to take a suggestion. No mechanism. Well, I found a way to get their suggestion.
That is not uncommon.
And to me, it was very sad. It's like, I'm actually a happy customer. I just want you to be able to improve the product a little bit better. I want to tell you a certain situation. I'm hitting this key a lot, and it shouldn't break for a keyboard that 15 years ago was a $100 keyboard. I did get their attention. Any of you guys remember a book back in the 90s called The Power to Get In Sales? Do you remember that book? So basic idea is that people operate based on fear and desire for gain. And if you target those things, and this is a sales approach. So I simply put together an email explaining this issue, and there's no way for me to communicate this with the support staff or the design team. And I made sure I sent a copy of this to several of the big technology magazine reporters that I found by searching the web, as well as that department I was trying to get into, and then other departments that I knew that were higher and adjacent to that department, right? Because the idea is that internally within an organization, maybe people don't care about the customer, but what they do care about is their job. And so this is just politely pushing that button. And I'll tell you what, within half an hour, I had someone calling me wanting to send me a new keyboard, which is not what I wanted. I didn't want a new keyboard. I wanted to give feedback because I liked the company, but they had no mechanism. So support automation, something like a web to case.
Send you a new keyboard than it is to handle the customer.
Exactly. But they didn't have good support automation. But something like a web to case system will let you be able to do that within your organization. Again, it depends on how well you implement this, but the tools are there now. Again, catching things so they don't fall through the cracks. Linking silos of information so that, marketing's not on a different database than sales. That can be a problem sometimes. Or maybe accounting, it's a totally different system. You can link these things now. Better internal, external communications. quick report generation. I did one system for a bank out in California, a pretty big bank in Beverly Hills. The VP that brought me in, he had to spend about an hour every week to create this report, and he was tired of it. And I looked at it and I thought, I can build that really fast. So he just had to make sure that when he did his normal calls, he was doing business lending, that he captured one little piece of information that he captured anyway, but I made sure he captured it in the database. And I built a report so that at the push of a button, he had this report in 10 seconds, what usually took him an hour. And what's even nicer, I made it look like it was a written report because he was concerned that management would not like a different report style. So I had to make it look just like the handwritten reports they were already using. I did that. So you can do some great things with good report generation. Be a real time saver. And at the same time, you keep that information. You get those analytics. Why? Because those become business intelligence. One example, another report that I designed for one company, they were an ultrasound manufacturer, ultrasound equipment manufacturer. Best in the world at that time. They weren't the best seller. They had the best product. This is back in 1999, 2000. They had a real-time 3D ultrasound device. All their stuff was made in Austria. It was a Korean company. But their competitors were selling more of their own product through rebranding than they were selling their own. So that tells you there's some problems in that organization. So I built a report for them where salespeople, at the close of a sale, whether they won it or they lost it, they just asked one simple question. What is the number one reason you chose to go with us or not go with us? And now that gets combined with the quantity of the sale. And then I can give them a report where at the push of a button or two, they can analyze by salesperson, by region, or by the entire company. What are the number one reasons we're losing sales and the number one reasons we're getting sales? That's good business intelligence.
What's the reason?
I don't know. I built the report. That company, well, I'll get to it. So something bad happened to that company. So if I still have time, we'll get to it. It's going to be an example when CRM goes wrong. So, all right. So some of the key things. Scope creep. We've all seen this before, right? Why does scope creep happen? Well, managers and users usually don't know what they want until they actually see it in the technology. This is especially the case in smaller businesses that have less experience with technology. And the more they start to understand the technology and the capabilities of the system they're looking at, the more ideas they have of things they want to do. Okay, we make it this. Now, if you're the consultant or the implementer coming in and you're working on a fixed bid, you said, okay, we're going to deliver this, boom. And then they start saying, we want you to do this and we want you to do this. Oh, that would be great if you could do this. What do you say as a consultant? No. I'm going to start losing money because it'll never stop. Once you say yes, they're going to ask for the next thing and the next thing. I mean, as helpful as you want to be, when they ask, you got to say no. That doesn't mean you may not deliver it anyway. If you want to over-deliver, which is smart in sales. But this really puts the consultant in a bind when you start asking for these things. So they wind up looking like the Grinch, not giving you all those new features. You may be using a less than ideal implementation model, which might be happening here, causing the scope creep. You want to have some flexibility, but what's more important is that you're working with an implementer you can really trust. So if they're telling you, we want to do this, and this would be good for you, you don't think, well, they're just trying to get into my pockets more. But that they're really thinking this is actually going to help your business. And if they tell you no, you probably don't want to do this, you want to be able to say, okay, I trust you guys, we're going to go with that. There's a lot of nice things customers may ask for that can't be justified by ROI. They just like it. It's not going to save them time, it's not going to make them more efficient, it's not going to increase sales. Should you be spending their money to build those things? As long as they understand that and they still want to go for it, then that's fine. I had an example. Probably my worst scope creep ever was a company. They put on debutante balls in Los Angeles for the rich and powerful when their daughters hit, 16? 16, they want to introduce them to the world, and it's a big white glove affair, but they're doing a good thing. They're actually raising money for the Children's Hospital through that. And what's implied, if your daughter is chosen to be in this ball, it's implied your family's going to give a sizable donation to the Children's Hospital. And this system, this was a single user system, probably one of the most lucrative clients I ever had. One user license, highly customized. About 4 different technologies integrated with a lot of custom reports. I was breaking Seagate Crystal reports. If you guys remember Crystal reports back then, that was the standard for reporting. I was breaking it with the complexity of the reports I was generating. I had to do some crazy stuff to make that work that had to do with ripping out some things from a different version and putting it in that version. We're talking the DLL, right? Dynamic linked library level. Don't know why or how it worked, but it did, and I was happy. But we had massive scope creep on that project because they kept telling us all these ideas. It was not at all what we thought it was going to be in the beginning. In the beginning, their needs seemed to be very simple, and I recommended they go with a goldmine platform because most of what they wanted was already built into the system. The farther along we went, in hindsight, it would have been better if we would have just gone from the bottom up with, like, say, an Access database or some other system like that. But we didn't know that going into it. So with that scope creep, then you have to decide, are we going to change our strategy at this point? Are we going to lose all the work we've done and start over? Or are we going to stay on the platform where we're at right now, knowing that increasingly the things they're asking for are harder and harder to do on that platform, and you're having to resort to more bubblegum and baling wire to make it work? That's a tough decision. But in this case, I had a great relationship with the ladies that ran this organization, and every step of the way I try to show them, okay, you're asking for this, you realize this might be less than ideal, and being totally open and honest about, this platform that I put you guys on, it may not have been the best in hindsight, but none of us knew that going in. And as long as you have good communication and openness and you trust each other, you can survive scope creep. In some cases, embrace the creep. There can be great ideas that people discover as they start getting an understanding of what the technology can do. Here's another pitfall: trying to do more in-house than you should. Basically, in a nutshell, there are folks who are experts. Let the experts be experts. Don't be overconfident because you're an engineer and you're pretty good with this. Sometimes if they tell you no, it's not because they're just trying to get in your pocket. It's because, this is kind of advanced and I'm not so sure you know what's going on. An example of this, a company I mentioned, that a filtration company out in California was a client of mine. They wanted to do a project where they're synchronizing data with their remote sales reps. And I did a goldmine project for them already, and I came into them and I said, you know what, you probably want to have me set up the synchronization. And the president was like, no, I'm an engineer, I know how to do this. By the way, you want me to check your backups, make sure? He goes, no, I got those under control. Big mistake. I spent a whole day getting trained in the synchronization, spent a lot of money, not to mention practical experience learning how to use that tool. He missed one little element. And the result was his entire vendor database was deleted. Now, vendors are very important if you're a company that manufactures things, right? His entire vendor database was gone. He said, no problem, I'll go get my backups. Guess what? His backups had not been working for, I think it was a year.
What do you do about his hard copies?
About his what?
Hard copies.
Hopefully that's what he had.
Your backup.
Hopefully he had that, and that's what he had to re-enter everything in by hand. So if that wasn't there, then you're talking about a serious problem. So just be careful about not trying to do more than you're qualified to do. That's something that can go wrong in a CRM project. In a bigger organization, thinking that we've got technical staff, but maybe they're not trained and certified in the platform. Interface with the consultants and the implementers. Maybe they can hand off some things to your internal staff to save you money, but get their advice on that. Insufficient budget. If you do not invest properly in your CRM initiative, there's a good chance your software is going to go unused or misused. Why is that? Well, maybe you don't invest enough in having a good, clean interface for your users, or you don't spend time with them learning about their processes and what they need. And they see this as something that's actually going to make their job harder, not easier. Have you ever heard that before? I hate the new system, it makes my job harder. That's a sign that somebody did not spend enough time customizing, and it's probably because of budgetary constraints. Maybe they should have done less, had a smaller size project, but what they did, do it well. And then people use what they have in the end.
UX thought process like that.
And also another key, Make sure you budget for training. Cannot overemphasize the importance of training. My sister works for a school, and she's pulling her hair out all the time. They put in a whole new system. They spent just a ton of money for the system, and nobody knows how to use it. Projects can fail or be postponed because of insufficient budget. You got to remember, the consultants you bring in, they need time to do discovery, to establish your requirements if they're going to do the job well. If anyone's coming in and they're just trying to install software right off the bat, you're on a wrong track. You may be underestimating the cost of your implementation expenses. You also have to factor in some hidden costs like staff overtime. The time it takes them to learn the new system or spend time being shadowed by the consultants. That's going to be a drain. Also, opportunity costs. During this transition, when you're putting time in working with the consultants developing this new solution, you may be losing some sales opportunities, and you have to consider that as part of the cost as well too. Management has goals. Those are the key driver, but that's not the only factor in your development here. Change is difficult in organizations, and this is something that I really believe in. To the degree that managers are involved is the limit to what they should be allowed to approve or disapprove on the elements of a project. For example, if a manager is not involved in the interface design, they should not have veto authority over the interface design if you've designed the interface with mid-level managers and users, and they're all happy with it. This was a case with this ultrasound company. The CEO, who was not used to working with American salespeople, he had run divisions of the company in China and Brazil prior to that. He would not give me any time to express his vision or what he wanted to do in the system. So that's fine. I'll work with all your mid-level managers. And they loved what we built. We had a lot of great meetings, a lot of great stuff designed. They were very impressed with it. He saw it and he just said, no, it's not what I want. Oh, but you don't want to give us any time to actually learn what you want either. This is a problem. When his sales staff saw this attitude that he had, he lost half of his sales force. They just left the company. Because they loved the new system we were going on, but it's like, it wasn't just the system, it was an indicator they couldn't work with him. Right. So it was really sad, and we tried to salvage it. The IT guy had to run the marketing department because the marketing people left. And he was amazing. He was a great guy, a fellow from Romania, as I remember. And we finished the project. I made a lot of money, but I would rather have seen the company successful. And this is one of those things. If I was more experienced, as soon as he said I don't have time for you, I should have drawn that line and said, okay, you do not get to disapprove anything then. I didn't know enough. I was still a little too young in business to know that. I know it now. Wrong implementation models. I won't spend too much time on this. There are just, I'm going to breeze through this really quick, but there are different models of implementation, and you want to work with consultants who are familiar with this, whether it's Big Bang, which might work for smaller businesses where you do everything all at once, or something that's more like an agile methodology, sequence steps. It can be very demanding on the project team that does this, but this is a nice approach. So there's a hybrid model. David Tabor, who's kind of a guru in the Salesforce world, he literally wrote the book on Salesforce implementations. He recommends a hybrid. He calls it the wave model. I won't go into details, but the point is you want to make sure that you're using an implementation model that's going to fit your business and not put you in a bad spot. And that might mean at the wave model, maybe instead of getting everything all at once or according to a preset sequence, you do bite-sized pieces. And especially if you have a large organization, you don't do it for the whole organization. You do it for departments. Maybe departments want to do different stages at different times. It can be a very useful model in some cases, the wave model. Or there's so many. There's a lot of buzzwords. There's probably about 12 different methodologies for doing projects. Lack of buy-in. Okay, so from stakeholders, departments, that can be a big killer. Somebody really doesn't believe in what you're doing. But I include users up here too. If you don't have buy-in from users can sabotage a project. Users do not want their jobs made more difficult. Users do not want to have to learn a new system but still have the same productivity expectations put upon them. Nobody likes to be put in that situation. This is really a leadership issue. Maybe there's not enough shared vision about how this project is going to raise everyone's ships. Maybe people are too busy. We're busy in business, right? It's called busyness. People don't have time to work with a consultant to tell them how to change things or what they don't like about their system. They're too busy trying to meet their numbers. So these can be challenges. And also users and departments, they might not like the idea of change on an emotional level.
We always have time to do it over.
Failure to manage change. Users and departments, again, I mentioned they may fear change. Why? Well, their jobs might get redefined or become obsolete in some cases, or they may be losing control of data, and data is what made them important in that organization. Sometimes you see this with salespeople, right? They have their list and they don't want to share it with anybody else. That can be an issue. It can be a loss of prestige or clout. Users can fear they're not going to be cut slack while learning a new system. They might fear the system's going to make their job harder. I mean, we've seen it, right? You have some folks in your organization that really are just not adaptable, and you might want to find a diplomatic way for them to find the exit. But in most cases, that's not the issue. It's usually we're not spending time listening to the actual users of a system. Doing it right. So thoughts on budgeting for CM, because this is one of the issues, right? Not budgeting properly. So here's some thoughts on this. Whatever you think you're going to spend on customization and implementation of your software, just double it. This is not scientific advice. Training. Factor at least 10% of your budget to train your people. Don't think, oh, they're going to learn it because I tell them so. That's a really bad sign if you hear someone say that. The more you invest in good interfaces, the less time you need to spend training, right? If you can create, like I did with Don, you just change his data. Actually, great example. He didn't even have to change the data in a field. I gave him a button to push. It changed the data in the field for him. He didn't even have to pick from the drop-down list. That's how simple his system was. Push the button and move things to the next stage. Accept that discovery is going to take time and money. That's where the consultant comes in and they have to learn your business. Your business is different from everyone else's. They have to ramp up, and usually we're pretty good at doing that, but it takes time. You have to factor that into your budget. Budget for your staff's overtime or lower productivity goals. You're going to say, okay, we're going to make this change. It's going to make us money in the long run, but this next quarter, we're not going to be hitting the numbers like we used to, and we accept that. Break your features or your project into prioritized phases, kind of like that wave model approach. Don't try to do everything at once, but what you do, try to do it well. Managing change, some keys. Work towards your goals from the bottom up. I mean from the user's point of view up. Management sets the goals. We start there. But then after that, we work with the users. Shadow them, interview them, find out what their needs are. This can be a good time to also thinking about what your customers' needs are. How can you better be meeting the needs of your customers? Leadership and communication is really key to manage change. Share the importance of the project, how this is going to help everybody else, everyone. It's going to raise all ships. It's going to empower all your users. Maybe not all at once, but as you go through the cycles of this project, eventually it's going to come to my department and I'm going to have a better system. Listen to and address the user's concerns on a regular basis. Not just give them a speech at the start about this is what we're going to do and you're going to like it or find another home. Identify and deal with the issues of silo fiefdoms. Marketing's got their area and we don't want anyone touching it, and sales has their department. Try to get everyone on the same sheet. That can be hard, but that's a leadership issue. Deal with job functions changing. What are you going to do about Bob, whose job is going to become obsolete? Are you going to try to work with Bob and find a different position in your organization for him or help him get another job? Or are you just going to leave him out there hanging and let him muck up your CRM implementation because he's trying to save his job? Loosen your production expectations, and again, if there are people who are just unadaptable, help them find the exit. This is a key. So if one thing I want you guys to really catch is this cycle. It's called the journey of technology. This is a way within your organization to optimize your CRM projects, make sure you're doing them right more often than not. Starts with establishing goals. And make sure these goals are measurable. Like what? Well, we want to see a 10% increase in sales. 10% increase in sales, by the way, doesn't mean a 10% increase in profit. It could be a lot more, because you've already covered your overhead, right? Plan how to measure these goals. Want to have a way to measure this, because this is how we're going to see if we actually got some ROI from the project. Then you start with the users. What are their needs? But you got one eye on the goals, but now you're looking at the users. How can you help them do their job better? What are their pain points? What are their concerns? What changes are they worried about? How is their time being wasted by poor processes or lack of technological tools? What kind of interface would they like to work with? And while you're there, start thinking what kind of procedures, what processes can be automated. Then we look at processes. Now that we know what users need, now we start building our processes. Don't build your processes without interviewing users first. How can processes be improved, eliminated, or re-engineered? And you want to get rid of the bad processes. Why? You probably use this phrase too, right? If you automate bad things, you just do bad things faster.
Couldn't notice that.
So define processes as they should be, not as they are now, because again, you got one eye on the goals and also thinking about the technology. What can the technology let us do that we can't do right now? Sometimes there are legacy processes in an organization. People don't know why they do them. That's just the way they were taught to do them. But there's no good purpose for them anymore. Get rid of those. New processes that can be possible with automation. There's a good role. There's a new movement of business process analysis that has developed over the last decade and a half. They focus on having good processes, and they understand those are more important than the technology you choose. I'll say that again. Having good processes are more important than what technology you choose. Do you have a sales process or do you sell by accident? What happens with selling by accident, John? Accidents
Accidents happen.
Exactly, they happen, but they don't happen often enough, right?
No.
Are you disqualifying prospects early enough? Why would you want to disqualify a prospect early? Anyone?
Can't afford it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that'd be the number one thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you can establish that they're just not a good fit for us, they're probably not going to buy. They meet a certain demographic that just never buys from us. You're busy. You don't have time. I mean, don't be impolite, but get them out of the pipeline.
Yeah.
Keep marketing to them, but get them out of the sales pipeline until those numbers change, where they look potentially, or they just yell at you, "I want to buy now." As your company grows, you might want to consider reorganizing your sales organization. Again, this is nothing to do with technology. Maybe you want to have dedicated qualifiers. So you go from marketing to your qualifiers, and then from your qualifiers you go to your sales reps. Maybe you want to have an account desk. If you've got higher end or doing high end sales, having an account desk can be a good thing. Always looking for ways to streamline those processes. Only now at this stage in the journey of technology are we even looking at software. So those software companies that are coming at you just saying our software is going to solve all your problems, just stop listening to them. It's not about that. It's about first your goals, what your users' needs are, what your processes are, or what they should be, and then you say, okay, what software is now going to let me automate those processes I've defined and achieve those goals? What solutions are going to give me the most bang for the buck? What model, whether it's out of the box or software as a service? And keep in mind, just because something can be automated does not mean it should be automated. I'll talk about that in a second. After you know your software, then you know your infrastructure, like what hardware or what kind of internet bandwidth you need. So if we have things in the right order, the decision-making process starts to become easier. Then we look at our results at the end of the project after a period of time. And remember we talked about goals being measurable? We look at the measurements. Compare that with the goals, put it all in a feedback loop, and now we have lessons learned for the next time the cycle starts. And along this period, we're also going to be measuring user adoption. That's another key measure of success. Are users actually using the system and using it as they should? So we're checking our ROI here. Rinse and repeat. Go back, hop back into the journey. Start again with goals because technology is always changing. Maybe you can do better things 5 years, 10 years from now. Automation caution. I mentioned just because something can be automated does not mean it should be. You have to ask, will it increase productivity and justify the cost? There's I teach philosophy, and I try to keep philosophy out of here, but some of it slipped in. In Plato's Phaedrus, Socrates tells the story of King Themis and the god Thoth. You guys ever heard this story? It's a great story. It's related in Neil Postman's book, Technopoly, which I highly recommend, about how technology has often a negative impact in ways that we don't discern early on. Great book. King Themis is very powerful king, and the god Thoth decides he wants to bless King Thamus. So he brings him up to his palace and says, you know what, I'm so impressed with you, I want to give you a gift for humanity. And let me show you all these great things that I can give humankind. And he shows him all these great wonders, these great technologies. And at one point he stops and he says, oh, here, how about this? Writing. I will give humankind the gift of writing, right? And the Egyptians are known for their writing. I'll give you writing. With writing, you're going to be able to remember more than you ever could before. But King Thamus was very wise. He thought about it. He said, actually, the opposite is going to happen. If we have the ability to record our thoughts, we no longer need to remember them. Our memories will grow weaker. Some ancient wisdom that still applies today. How many of us have terrible spelling now because of spell check? Exactly. So what Neil Postman, the way he phrases it, is that embedded in every technology is a philosophical bias. It's going to affect you and how you live. Will automation change how we relate to our customers? So when we're thinking about automation, we have to consider this. Is this going to change how I relate to the people I'm trying to relate to? Is it going to actually take me out of the relationship more? Rather than aiding the relationship, it's going to pull me out of the relationship. Maybe some things don't need to be automated. My brother-in-law works for Junior Achievement Arizona. He puts on the golf tournaments. You ever been to him?
Yeah, that's great.
So he's like their key fundraiser and event planner. They came to him with a system that was going to automate all of his fundraising for him. You know, it'll contact all these people for you, and it'll do this, and it'll save you so much time. And he said, I won't use it. It was very important to him when he made those calls, and he talked to the secretaries, the gatekeepers, and then eventually the people he's getting the money from. That was important relationship building time, not only with the target, but with the gatekeeper too, because he discovered other opportunities just by chewing the fat with them, spending time, quality time with them. And that's an example where automation would have ruined that. And he was wise enough to say, no, that's not going to help me. So just because a consultant like me or a software salesman comes to me and says, hey, we can automate that for you, don't assume that's always the best thing. It might be. It might save you time. But consider how that's going to change how you actually relate to the people you're trying to serve, your customers. That's it. We got through it. Any questions?